Hello everybody, this is Dr. Vishal Trivedi from Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering, IIT Guwahati. And what we were discussing about the topics from your biology course for the class 11 and 12 under the program IIT PAL. And in this series, we were discussing about the chapter Animal Kingdom. So within the Animal Kingdom, we discuss about the different criteria and different characteristics of the organism belonging to the animal kingdoms. And then in the previous lectures, we have also discussed about the criteria of dividing the or criteria of classifying the animal kingdoms. Like these criteria could be the level of organizations, symmetry, body cavity or the coelom, and in that context, we discuss about the different types of phylums. For example, we discuss about the Porifera, which is actually acoelomate, mostly asymmetrical, and it has a basic cellular level of organizations. And then we also moved on to a higher level of organizations. We discussed about the tissue level organizations or the organ and organ system organizations. And in that we discussed about the Coelentata, Titanophora, Platyhelminthes, Aschelminthes. And then within the bilateral symmetry, we also discussed about the true coeloms, animals which contains the body cavity. And within that, we discuss about the Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata, and the Hemichordata. And in the previous lectures, we also discussed about the chordata. We compared the characteristics of the chordata versus the non-chordata animals. And then within the chordata, we also further discussed how the chordata is being divided into the divisions. So what you see here is that the chordata is being divided into the different subphylums, and within that subphylum we discuss about the two phylums and their corresponding the classes in the previous lectures. And the third subphylum is the vertebrata, which is actually further been divided into the two divisions. The division one is Gantha, which actually does not contain the jaw, and within that we have discussed about the class Cyclostomata. And in the and then we discuss about the second division, that is called as the Gnathostomata, which actually these are the animals which actually bears the jaw. And within that we have the two superclasses. We have the Pisces and we have the Tetrapoda. So the superclass Pisces is further divided into the two different classes, the chondrocytes as well as the osteocytes. Chondrocyte is the cartilage fishes and the osteocytes are the bony fishes. So up to this we discussed in the Gnathostomata, and we discuss about the superclass species. Now in today's lecture we are going to start discussing about the Tetrapoda. So as the name suggests, Tetrapoda means the animals which are actually going to bear the limbs. So the superclass Tetrapoda are the animals which actually going to bear the two pairs of limb or the appendages, which means they are actually going to contain the four appendages. These animals are, whereas the exception is that the snakes are considered as the Tetrapoda, but they don't have the limbs. The superclass Tetrapoda has the four subclasses. These four subclasses are the amphibia, reptilia, aves, and the mammals. So amphibia are the classical example is frog. The reptilia is the classical example is a snake or the crocodile, snake and crocodiles. Aves are the classical examples are the different types of birds, and the mammals are the different types of mammals like buffalo, cow, man, and deer, and all those kind of mammals. So let's discuss and start discussing about the the superclass Tetrapoda, and we'll start our discussion with the amphibia. So class amphibia, which is also called as the animals which are actually staying on the land as well as the water, and that's how the name is called as the amphibia, which means the animals which can actually be able to stay on the two different habitats. So these animals live on the land as well as the animals, which means they are actually the terrestrial animal as well as the aquatic animal. So they are acclimatized for both type of both type of habitats. They are poikilothermic animals and they are carnivorics. So if you recall, the poikilothermic means they are cold-blooded animals, so they cannot maintain their body temperature. Whatever the temperature would be the outside, that would be the temperature of the frog, and that is called as the poikilothermics. The body is divided into the head, trunk and the tail. So what you see here is a typical amphibians like the frog, and it has the three parts like the body. This is the part which is called as the trunk, and this is the part which is called as the tail. There are two pairs of limbs which arises from the pelvic girdle, and there are two pairs of limbs which are starting from the pectoral girdles. So you have the forelimbs which are going to be start from the and then you have the hind limbs. So it's actually going to have the four pairs of appendages. In frogs, the webs are present between the digits which help him to swim. So these are the these are the webbed fingers what is present in the frog, and you see here that there's a skin like appendages between this, and that actually allows they will look like a flippers. So they actually helps for the frog to swim. The skin is moist, granular with a mucous membrane. So the skin is very moist, and it actually contains the mucous membrane. So that mucous membrane actually allows the for gaseous exchange. For example, when it secretes the mucus, it actually dissolves the atmospheric oxygen, and that's how it actually helps the frog into the respiration as well. They have a prominent eardrum or the tympanic membrane which are present in the head. So this is the what is called as the tympanic membrane, which allows them to sense the sound waves. And as you can see in this frog, what you see here is they have a very prominent eyes, and the eyes are also having the nictitating membrane. Nictitating membrane means that it is actually going to have a film like thing, so that when they will swim within the water, this film is actually going to become on top of the eyes, and that's how they are actually be able to see. Then they have the nostrils, and they have the mouth in the front, and then they are also having the parotid glands. This parotid gland is actually secretes large amount of the antimicrobial peptides, and those actually helps the frog to be protected from the microbial infections. There are typical examples of the amphibians like the frogs. You have the salamanders, then you have a toad, and then you also have the other kinds of other kinds of animals. The intestine as well as the digestive glands are well developed. So you can see that the frogs are carnivorous, and that's why they are actually having a very well developed intestine as well as the digestive systems. So within the digestive system, you have the all sort of digestive organs, like you have the gallbladder which actually stores the digestive enzymes. You also have the liver which actually can make the all sort of juices. Then you have the oesophagus, followed by you have a stomach, then you also have the intestine, small intestine, and then you also have the rectum, so where the stools and everything is going to be protected, and then the last part you are also going to have the anus. Apart from that, the frogs are also having a very high amount of fat bodies, and these fat bodies actually are storing large quantity of fat, and these fats are actually allowing the frog to stay, to keep taking the nutrition when they are going through the hibernations. So you know that because these animals are the poikilothermic, so they cannot maintain their body temperature. Once the winter comes, they are actually has to be hide into those warm places. And when they hide into those warm places, they not only they hide into those places, they also reduce their metabolic requirements, like they also reduce their metabolic activities, and they also completely dependent on these fat bodies, because otherwise, so these fat bodies are storing the energy and the food material, and that's how they are actually utilizing them for the minimum metabolic activity what they are supposed to do. And the circulatory system is of closed type, and the heart is three chambered and the ventral. So heart position is the ventral side, which means the heart is actually going to be on this, closer to the chest, and the heart is three chambered, and the RBCs are biconvex and nucleated. The respiration is through skin. If you remember, we're discussing about the mucous membrane. So the skin has a very large quantity of mucous membrane, and it actually contains the different types of glands, and that actually secretes a large quantity of mucus, and that mucus actually dissolve the atmospheric oxygen, and that's how it actually helps in respirations. It has a very well developed lungs. So when they are on the when they are in the land, they actually utilize the lungs for respirations, and they also have the buccopharynx, so that buccopharynx also can be used, which means they can actually be able to do the respiration from all the three sources. They can utilize the skin to absorb this, the air what is dissolved into the atmosphere, or they can use the lungs when they are on the terrestrial, and when they can also use the buccal pharynx, like they can open the mouth and breathe also. The nervous system is well developed, so they have a very well developed nervous system, so that they can be able to be able to do all the they can be able to sense all sort of problems. The sexes are separate, and these are oviparous, and fertilization is external. So what you see here is, this is a adult frog, and it is actually, so you can imagine that if this is a female frog, then it will actually throw the eggs, and once it is throwing the egg, these eggs are actually being entangled into a jelly like situation. So they will be entangled in a jelly like thing, and so that these eggs could not be washed away. So so this is a female frog which has given the eggs, and that eggs are going to be stored in one part of the pond, and then the male will actually going to flow the sperms into these eggs, and then there will be a fertilization, and that's how these eggs are going to be developed into the zygote, and then zygote is going to develop into the embryo, and these embryos are then actually going to stick to one or more the trees or the small plants within the pond, and that's how they will actually going to take up the nutrition from the plants, and they will develop. And once they develop, then they will become the tadpoles. So the tadpoles are actually going to develop the external gills for breathing, and then they will be keep taking the nutrition from the pond as well as from the plants, and they will be keep growing. And then there will be a hinge length is going to appear, which means the hinge leg are going to be developed, and then it will leave the frog stored in the tail. So during this phase, they are going to have a very long tail, and the amount of material what you have in the tail is actually going to be consumed by the frog or the tadpoles for their nutrition while they are going through with the process of metamorphosis. So you see that the tail is actually shortening while it is growing in size, and then the tail becomes very short, and ultimately it is actually going to develop the young frog, which does not contain the very large tail, and then eventually the young frog is going to be developed into the adult frog. The development, so you see the fertilization is external, like the fertilization is occurring in the pond's water, right? And the development is also occurring in the water, and it is indirect, which means there will be a metamorphosis. Then we'll move on to the next class, and that is called as the class Reptilia. So the class Reptilia is the animals which are actually slides onto the land, right? They are terrestrial animals, and they actually crawl onto the surface. So these are the crawling animals like cobra, crocodile, and turtle. You see here, right? All the animals are crawling, and that's how they don't move in a straight direction. They move in a zigzag manner, right? Whether it is a crocodile, or whether it is a snake or turtle, or even the lizards also. They are the first true terrestrial vertebrates. Few may be aquatic or semi-aquatic, found in the marshy lands. So these are the terrestrial animals. They don't, but some of their animals, some of their members are also found in the aquatic animals. See, most of them are carnivorous. So the locomotion is by the limbs, which have the well-developed pentadactyl digits and claws, which helps the animal to creep or to crawl. So what you see here is actually all these animals are actually the pentadactyly, which means they are actually going to have the 5 fingers. So if you have a 5 finger, then the animal is called as the pentadactyly. And they have the digits, like they are going to have the nails and they are going to have the claws, which help the animal to creep. The reptiles are also poikilotherms, like they are cold-blooded, which means they also cannot be able to maintain the body temperature, and because of that, just like amphibians, the reptiles are also will go through with the process of called hibernation. So they are also going to do a hibernation where they are actually going to utilize the the body fat and all other kinds of stored material for sustaining their metabolic activities, and that's how, because they go through with the hibernations, they are actually going to be very metabolically inactive and as well as the physically very active, and they will try to be remain in some places where the temperature is going to be slightly warm, and that's how they can be able to sustain their life. The skin is dry, non-granular, and covered by the epidermal scales, scouts, or the plates. So the skin is very dry and non-granular, and it is covered by the epithelial scales. So you might have seen the scales onto the turtle's body, or you might have seen the the plates onto the crocodile body as well. And all these is just only to protect and give you the extra support. The class Reptilia has the heart is incompletely four-chambered and ventral, and circulatory system is of closed type. The crocodile only has a four-chambered perfect heart. So what is mean by the incomplete four-chambered heart is that it is actually not having a clear and complete septum. So what you see here is the 4 different types of hearts. Fish has the 2-chambered heart, right? You have one auricle and two ventricle. Then the amphibians are the 3-chambered heart, and then reptilia you have the partially 4-chambered heart, which means they are going to have the incomplete 4-chambered heart. And the birds onward, you are going to have the 4-chambered, perfectly fine 4-chambered heart, and that is the well-developed heart what is present in the animal system. The eardrum is depressed, which means that there will be no eardrum, so it will be only going to have a membrane which actually allow them to sense the sound waves. The respiration is through lungs, because these are terrestrial animals, so they have a well-developed lungs, so they will be able to take the air through the respirations. Brain is also very well developed. The olfactory lobes and the cerebellums are better developed than the amphibians. So the reptilians are much more advanced animals compared to the amphibian, and that is because they are having a well-developed nervous system, whether it will be in terms of olfactory lobes or the cerebellum. The sexes are separate and show the prominent sexual dimorphism. So if you remember and recall, what is meant by the sexual dimorphism is that the male and female are going to have the distinct morphological features which can be recognized. And they are actually going to have the fertilization, which is internal. The reptiles are oviparous. They lay eggs and show the parental care, which means you can see that the 2 animals, the female and male, are actually going through with the further process of fertilizations. So they will go through with the sexual intercourse, and then in that case the female is actually going to receive the sperms from the male, and that's how the fertilization is going to be internal, but the development is going to be external. So once the fertilization is done, then the female snake is actually going to lay the eggs, and then these eggs, it will actually going to be protected, and then the females are actually going to keep them warm for some time, and that's how they will be go through with the process of the development, and that's how the from the snakes eggs the tiny baby snakes are going to come out, and then these tiny snake babies are actually going to acquire the nutrition, and that's how they will convert into the adult snakes. Then we'll move on to the class aves. So class aves are mostly the class where you have the birds, right? So it includes the flightless and the flying birds. So you can have the birds which are actually can be able to fly, or the birds which cannot be able to fly. The forelimbs are modified into the wing for flying. So they have the only two limbs, which are the hind limbs, and the forelimbs are being converted into the feather-like conditions, and that's how they are actually being used. Those for flying. The hind limbs are used for walking or to the running. The aquatic birds have a web web between the toe, like for example the duck. So you can see this is the feet of a duck, and it has a membrane-like condition. So this is exactly the same as it was present in the amphibians, and that allows these birds to swim into the water. Body is differentiated into head, neck, trunk, and tail. So it has the four portion. It has the head, right? So this is the head. Then head is followed by a very tiny neck, right? And then it will going to have the trunk. So this is the main body, which is called as the trunk. And then it's also going to have the tail. So every bird is also having a very well developed tail. They are the first animals which are actually having the homeotherm, which means they are the warm blooded, which means they are actually going to maintain the body temperature. So normally they maintain a body temperature of the 37 degrees Celsius, exactly just like humans. And how they maintain the body temperature? They maintain the body temperature because they have the fur on their surface. So if they keep the fur, and they also have the circulatory systems, which actually allows them to keep the conservation of the energy, and that's how they will be able to maintain the body temperature. They have the the well developed wings, and they also have the well developed the beak, right? So beak is actually being used to pick up the food and other things, and they have the well developed throat and neck, and they also have the breast, which in some of the birds you might have seen the breast is very well developed, like the chickens, right? And they have the well developed stomach and the digestive system as well. These are the classical example. The ostrich, which is a flightless bird, so this actually can run only. Then we have the myna, parrot, sparrow, rhea, and penguins. So penguin is a the aquatic bird. Then the class aves, the scales are present on the hind limbs. The skin is thin, dry, and non-granular. The bones are hollow. How the birds can be able to fly? Because they are light in weight, and they are only light in weight because their bones are hollow in nature, which means you see here I have given you a comparison. This is the human bone, which is actually a solid bone where you have the bone mass and the bone cells, where you have the calcifications, and within that you have a marrow, right, where you are actually can be able to use to produce the blood cells. So this bone marrow is utilized to produce the blood cells, whereas in the case of bird it is actually having a air pockets. So you have a air filled in between the marrow and as well as within the bone also. Because of that, this bone is actually going to be very lightweight compared to the human bones. So jaw form the beak and the teeth are absent. So the birds does not contain the teeth, and instead of teeth they have the separate organ for grinding, and these specialized organs are called as the crop as well as the gizzards. So gizzard is a special organ what is present within the alimentary canal of the birds, and this is like you see here, this is the gizzard, right? So this is the this gizzard is being a churning organ. So it actually churns whatever food what they are actually consumed. For example, you might have seen that the birds are eating the food grains and the all sort of raw material, right? But they will get churned because they don't have the teeth, right? The blood is red due to the RBC, and the RBCs are biconvex and the nucleated. The heart is ventral in position and the four chambered, showing double circulations. Respiration is by lungs having the air sac for the buoyancy. So what you see here is a typical chicken, right? And it has all developed organs. It has a well developed digestive system which actually contains the specialized organs like the crop as well as the gizzard. Then it also has the well developed lungs which are being connected to the nostrils, right? So you have a nostril here which are like opening for taking the air. Then it has the larynx and tracheae, and then within the digestive system it has the oesophagus, then crop, and it has a four-chambered heart, and it has a the ovaries as well as and it has all sort of glands for digestions like the pancreas, the duodenum, the small intestine, large intestine, and all that. Uh, the brain is enlarged and well developed, well formed cerebellum. So they are actually very intelligent compared to the snake as well as the amphibians. The optic lobes are well developed. Olfactory lobes are poorly developed, which means they are being able to see the things very clearly, but they will be very bad in terms of the listening. So that's how they believe they were going to sustain that by the help of the the optics nerves. They are unisexual. The sexual dimorphism is there, and they are oviparous, and the internal fertilization. So internal fertilization is just like the snake. So they are actually going to be having a sexual intercourse, and after that the bird is going to lay the eggs. So the bird lay eggs with yolk and albumins, and you see here this is the adult chicken which is actually going to go through with the process of sexual reproductions, and adult chicken is actually will go through with the sexual intercourse. After that it will lay the eggs. These legs are actually the fertilized eggs. So these eggs will then form the embryo, and then the embryo is actually going to hatch to give you the baby chickens, and then these baby chickens are actually going to go through with the developmental stages and ultimately give you the adult chickens. Birds mostly build the nest on the tree. So what you see here is a typical nest which is being used with, which has been built with the help of the tiny sticks from the trees, right? So all the dead and dry sticks can be used to draw the to prepare the nest, and all the birds actually prepare the nest for keeping their eggs so that the eggs cannot be damaged and they can be get protected from all sort of the environmental issues, like if there will be a wind flow or there will be a rain, these eggs should not be get damaged. And on the top, they sit on top of this nest so that the eggs are also get the warm, because these eggs has to be warm for a period until they get hatched and the babies are coming out. You see that the different types of birds are actually making the nest for the different types, and that is a kind of the adaptation is present in these birds, because see, this is a nest which is being protected from all sort of problems, like, because what happens is if you have a nest like this, any kind of the prey could be able to damage these nests, or they can be able to consume these nests. But if you have the nest like this, it may be get protected from those kinds of the prey. So every bird is actually making the nest of their choice, and they are actually having this kind of training even in their genetics also. So every bird is known what kind of nest they are going to build. Mostly the birds are herbivorous, but some are carnivorous as well. They are very good in terms of parental care, because they keep taking the care of their new ones, and until they are actually good enough to sustain their own life. They also have the seasonal migrations. For example, they migrate from the colder regions to the hotter regions, and then from hotter regions to the colder regions. That seasonal migration, you might have heard about. All the Siberian birds are coming to India in the during the winters, because the temperature in the Siberia is in the below zero temperature, which they cannot sustain their lives. So that's how they actually fly from there and come back to the India, because the temperature what is being present in the India is well suited to them. And they also give the bird babies, or the birds also lays the egg in India, because that is the temperature what they are good for their survival. Urinary bladder is absent, and the female shows only the left ovary and the oviduct to reduce the body weight during the flight. So the females does not contain the two pairs of ovaries compared to like all other animals. It only contains the one pair of ovary and one pair of oviduct, simply because it wants to reduce the body weight so that they can be able to fly. Now come back to the class Mammalia. So in the class Mammalia, you have the first thing what you have is the mammary gland. So if you animals which are having the mammary glands, they are actually belonging to the class Mammalia, because they are using these mammary gland for the nutrition of the young ones. The mammals are terrestrial, aquatic, aerial, and the arboreal. So arboreal so terrestrial, the terrestrial means the animals which are actually staying on the land, right? Aquatic, which means the animals which are staying on water. Aerial, the animals which are only been staying in air. And what is mean by arboreal? Arboreal means the animals which are actually extensively staying on tree, right? So if they are animal on the staying only on tree, they are called as the arboreal. Most are herbivorous, few are carnivora, and some are omnivora. So you have a very diversifications within the class Mammalia because of their fooding habit itself. You have the herbivorous, classical example is deer. You have the carnivora, the classical example is the lion. And you have the omnivora, the classical example is the human. Then the locomotion is by the limb. So you have the two pairs of limbs, two in the front and two in the back. The body is divided into the head, neck, trunk, and the tail. So you see here, this is the typical rabbit, right? So you have four parts, like you have the head, then head is joining through the small neck, and then you have the trunk, and then you have the tail. They are the homeotherms, like they mean they also can be able to maintain their body temperatures. There are different mechanisms through which the different animals are maintaining their body temperature. Some are actually having the hairs, some are actually having the fur, some are actually having a very thick skin, and some are also having the other kinds of adaptations. For example, the humans are actually wearing the different types of clothes. So that is also help them to maintain the body temperature. And then they also maintain or run the metabolism in such a way so that it actually allows the production of heat, and that's how they are actually maintaining the body temperature. These are the examples from the animals which are belonging to the class Mammalia. You have a very small animals compared, and you have very large animals. So you have very large animals like the bluefish or the blue whale, or you have very small animals like the rabbit. You have a very diversifications. You have the herbivorous like the rabbits, you have the carnivorous like the jackal and lion, and you can have the animals which can be able to fly, right? So the bat, right? You can be able to have the animals which are staying on the tree also, and you also have the animals which are actually laying the eggs, such as the duck-bloody platypus. So that's how there is a very diversification in the class Mammalia. The class Mammalia, the skin is granular, having sweat glands and the sebaceous gland, which means they can be able to produce the sweat as well as they can be able to produce the wax. The sebaceous glands are present in the ear. The sweat gland is present throughout the skin. The body cavity is divided into two parts. You have a thoracic cavity as well as the abdominal cavity. So you have seen, right, in a human body, you have the two cavity. You have a diaphragm, which actually divides the body cavity into two parts. One is called as the thoracic cavity. So this is the thoracic cavity and this is the abdominal cavity. So in the abdominal cavity, you have the digestive system. In the thoracic cavity, you have the heart as well as the lungs. And here you are going to have the rib cage, right? So you are going to have a rib cage, and that is required only to protect the lungs as well as the heart. The mammals show the presence of an external ear, so you are going to have an external ear. Then the teeth are of different types. You can have the incisors, you have the canines, you have the molars, and you have the premolars. So these are all the different types of teeth. You have the incisors, you have the canines, you have the premolars, and you have the molars. And because of these different types of teeth, the mammals could be able to adapt for different types of feeding habits. For example, the premolar and the molar are actually being required for the for chewing or churning the grass. So that's why it is very good for the herbivora. So similarly, the canines as well as the incisor is required for the carnivora, because the canines as well as the incisor is required to break the meat into the different parts, and it is actually required to tear the meat also, and that's why these two teeth are actually giving the adaptation for the carnivorous kind of feeding habits, and these two teeth are actually giving the adaptation for the herbivora. So depending on the different types of teeth, the animal could be able to adapt for the herbivora type of nutrition or the carnivora type of nutrition or the mixing of both. For example, in the humans, you have all sort of these teeth, and they are well developed, and that's why the teeth, the animals, the humans are having the omnivora type of the habit, because they can be able to take the nutrition from the carnivora, they can be able to take the nutrition as the herbivora. The heart is well developed. It has a 4-chamber with a double circulations. The RBCs are biconcave and they are not having any nucleus, which means the RBCs are fully matured, and since they don't have a nucleus, the RBCs oxygen carrying capacity would be much higher compared to the birds as well as the snakes, except camel, which actually contains the nucleated RBCs. The blood is red in color because of the hemoglobin, the red pigments, and the respiration is by the lungs. So this is what you see. This is the circulatory system as well as so you see heart is a 4-chambered, and where the 2 chamber are being divided for the arterial blood, and the 2 chambers are being divided for the venous blood, and that's how it actually sends the venous blood to the heart, and that will get purified and then it come back to the body. So and then the heart is actually throwing that clean blood to the just part of the body. So that's how the heart is actually having a double circulations. The brain is highly developed, so they have a very well developed cerebellum and cerebellum. The cerebellum shows the transverse band called as the corpus callosum. The optic lobes are better developed than the olfactory lobes. The few mammals are oviparous, for example, the duck-billed platypus. So they actually lays the eggs. Some mammals have the pouches for the development of young ones. These mammals are called as the marsupials, for example, the kangaroos. So you see here they have a pouch which actually allow so that they can be able to harbor their young ones, and that is a kind of an adaptation into these animals, so that until the baby is not fully grown and adult, it can be able to get the protection from the adult ones. And these kind of animals are called as the marsupials. The classical example is kangaroos. The most mammals are the placental and they are the oviparous. So this is just a classical example where you have the adult dog. Then the adult dogs go through with the process of sexual reproductions. They will go through with the process of the so in that case, then the female is actually going to give birth to the different types of babies, and then these babies are actually going to take up the nutrition from the mother, and then they will develop into the puppies, and then these puppies are actually will grow, and then they will form the adult. So this is all about the classifications of the animal kingdoms, where you might have different types of animals. And I think if you recall, when we started the discussion of this particular type of chapter, what we said is, because there is a huge diversity in terms of their habitats, in terms of their feeding habits, in terms of their ability to acclimatize to a particular type of environment, we have taken the different types of criteria to classify them, because it is not possible to these animals to be classified by taking one or two criteria, and that's how the animals are being classified very extensively, utilizing the different types of criteria. So we have used the level of organizations, we talked about the symmetry, we did talk about the body cavity, and as well as, and then in that basis you have this we have classified the animal kingdoms into the different types of phylums. We discussed that into the Porifera, Coelenterata, Ctenophora, Platyhelminthes, Aschelminthes, Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata, and Hemichordata. And when we discuss about the chordata, we said that the chordata is very big phylum. So that's how this phylum is being divided into three subphylums: the subphylum Urochordata, subphylum Cephalochordata, and the subphylum Vertebrata. And then the subphylum Vertebrata is also having the diversified type of animals, and that's how the subphylum Vertebrata is being divided into two divisions. One is called as the Agantha, which lacks the jaw, or the Gnathostomata, which actually bears the jaw. So Gnathostomata, the Agantha is being classified further into the class called Cyclostomata, whereas the Gnathostomata is being divided into two superclass. One superclass is called as the Pisces, which are actually having the all sort of fishes, whether these are the cartilaginous fishes or the bony fishes, whereas the tetrapodas are the animals which are only having the limbs for their locomotions. So in that we have discussed about the amphibia, reptilia, albies, and the mammals. So with this, I would like to conclude my lecture here. So I hope you might have enjoyed the chapter, and you could have understood the topics, and you might have appreciated that the animal kingdom is so much diversified that the people are utilizing the different types of criteria to classify them. So with this, I would like to conclude my lecture here. Thank you.